Freaky was directed by Christopher Landon and co-written by himself and Michael Kennedy on yet another Blumhouse production film. It sees Vince Vaughn in the role of the butcher, a ruthless killer, and Catherine Newton as Millie, a shy teen who becomes the victim of the butcher's attack. However, the twist reveals itself when, because of the curse attached to the ancient dagger known as La Dola, which the butcher used to stab Millie, both the victim and the victimizer swap bodies. Millie wakes up in the body of the butcher, surrounded by gory objects, and the butcher wakes up in Millie's body in her pink and harmless room. From then on, Millie has 24 hours to reverse the curse, otherwise the body switch will be permanent. So that is Freaky 2021.
2021. This is not based on an older film though, is it? I mean, besides that it's very Freaky Friday, of course, but I mean, it's not the actual concept of it being a horror film.
No.
Is new,
Yeah,
isn't
I
it?
mean, yeah, the concept, like you said, so it's like a trope for like comedy films, but the film itself is not based on anything else that I know of.
Because I like how, because obviously Christopher Landon did Happy Death Day
Mhm.
before this, which also a horror film pretty much based on, let's say, Groundhog
Exactly,
Day,
yeah.
where the same thing happens, and then this is pretty much based on Freaky Friday. So I quite like that he just keeps doing this kind of horror comedies based
Exactly.
on these kind of 90s concepts.
That's how I feel as well, because if you think about like some comedy horrors, they get horror tropes and they make them funny. Whereas Happy Death Day, You Chew, and then Freaky, they're taking comedy tropes and they're making it horrific. So I think it's a intelligent twist that you might correct me and just shadow my world right now. But I haven't seen that in any other film.
Not that I can think of. The only thing I thought like that this film is even more similar to is the Hot. Although I think I haven't seen it in a while because I don't think that's based on like a murder or anything.
Is it with Amanda
No, Rachel McAdams.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen that one then.
Oh yeah, Amanda Bynes. That She's the Man. So that's where she switches bodies
okay.
with like a teenage boy. And the hot chick is a little bit more like this, where like a younger girl changes body with like this kind of trampy man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think what you were saying about, they turn it kind of like into horror. I did want to ask, like, do they really? Just because, yeah, it is like a horror comedy, but I think, while I think it's more suitable to a horror loving audience, I think it is more of a comedy when you break it down than a horror film, really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, for example, I was thinking about this just before we started recording, that when I saw the trailer for it with my brother, he was like, I'm never ever gonna watch this crap. I was like, oh, you sound so like so much fun. And then so I can see this film being seen as childish or not horror for some people. But what I mentioned about making it horrific is not necessarily turning into a like full on horror film, but just like making, instead of, the body swap has some funny elements, of course. But all of the death scenes are so gory and things like that. So that's how I found it interesting. Because even though it is comedy, like the death scenes are quite gory.
I was actually gonna point that out actually as well, that I thought it was extremely gory, especially
Mm-hmm.
considering I think this would have been fine for like younger audiences, except for how gory the death scenes were.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised that it is a 15 and not a PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's totally suitable for a PG-13 audience. I don't know if they're missing out on some audience by not making it PG-13, but then I guess they wanted to keep the gore in, which
Yeah.
makes it a 15. I guess that's just a choice. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, this would have been perfect as a PG-13, and now you're kind of missing out on that age group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. But like, I mean, I know that you haven't seen yet Fear Street on Netflix, but I saw that the director, she wanted to She was like, no, I'm gonna make it as gory as I can, so I don't care about the rating. So I think sometimes just a choice, not regarding audience, but like I wanna make this gory and I wanna put some gory scenes in, as in like Black Christmas 2019 was a PG-13 film and it wasn't gory at all, and that's when horror audiences were like, but it wasn't gory, so it wasn't as good. So, I mean, you can never please everyone, I think.
No, that's true as well. Which is funny because I'd say Black Christmas because it was more obviously about kind of student life. I feel like oh that's way more suitable for a bit of an older audience. While this because it takes place in high school and it has all these high school elements and tropes and things like that. I always think oh perfect for 13-year-olds,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like you said, it is a choice, and they must have made it for some reason. And to be honest, I don't know if we spoke about this on the podcast before, but we've definitely spoken about it in general. Just the idea of like annoying film audiences, and unfortunately, younger teenagers at horror films can be
Oh, yeah.
annoying sometimes to sit with. So, and when I went to see Freaky, I had a really chill, mature audience. So maybe that's also why that was picked. It's kind of like, oh, you know what? We don't want people to be going to this and just like shout through the film.
Hmm. Yeah. When I went to the cinema twice to watch Ricky. The first one was fine. The second one, some of them were like shouting at the film, but not like making funny comments. They were just like, get out, do this, do that. I was like, okay, chill. But that didn't bother me as much because I'd already seen the film.
It's one thing to be to be the receiver of an annoying audience, but I've been to the cinema before. So like sometimes you go to the cinema with like your friends, so they invite their friends, right? And I
Hmm.
literally, so my friend invited one of his friends who was apparently a very vocal cinema goer, and I was just like, oh my god, and she was shouting the entire time, and like, because she was just that invested in the film, and I just thought, oh my god, how is this like an actual thing? I always assumed people did it on purpose,
Yeah.
and she just like didn't even realize that what she was doing was like ridiculous, and like I think, and even like at the end of the film, people like turn around at her and were like, that was you were being kind of like annoying, and she was just like so surprised. And I just thought how have you been going to the cinemas for this long? And I just remember
Yeah.
thinking like this is more uncomfortable than having to hear other groups do it.
Yeah, because you're conscious.
Because I also think like what are you meant to say? Well, also I didn't really know her, so if it's my friend, I would have probably been like, look, man, this is really annoying. But because it wasn't my friend, it was a little bit like I don't really know whether this is something that I should say anything about. But
Yeah.
it was yeah, that was really annoying.
Yeah, that is one of my nightmares to go to the cinema. When like you end up going to the cinema with a full group and it's like something's gonna happen. Like I cannot have control of everyone. Because if you go with one, two people, it's like okay, like if one of them is being annoying, I can tell them to shut up. Whereas if it's a whole group and then there's like acquaintances or like friends of friends, like I cannot tell them to fuck off. So
Yeah, it makes me wonder how suitable the cinema even is for like a group hang. Because I did it a lot when I was younger, so I kind of get it. Why you see more groups of teenagers. Besides, it's probably also because they're young, they're too young sometimes to get into other places. But now I feel like a one-on-one cinema date, or maybe like three, maybe four people maximum, is kind of like okay.
unless it's like an experience, for example, like Valentine's Day, and then you go with your friends, or I don't know, watch a Christmas film, something like that. That are exceptions, but yeah, I don't think cinema groups are promising.
No, for sure. Luckily, I didn't have that experience with this film so much, but so I just wanted to kind of ask, um, kind of way before we go into spoilers, of course,
Yeah.
but what kind of did you think of both Vince Vaughn's and Catherine Newton's performances, both in their own roles and as well as when they switch bodies?
Mm. I think that Vince Vaughn as the killer was really good because he's gigantic. I'd never noticed before, but he's a gigantic person. And then Yeah, and then because of course on the cold open, he's very like violent, and even like my friend told me like when she first went to watch it, when the first scene happened, she's like, oh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have come because she's very afraid of horror.
And it's quite a heavy horror scene for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. So I thought that he was perfect for the killer, the violent killer, and of course because he's more known as a comedic actor, he was really fun in the role of a teenage girl. I really like that. And her as well, like I thought that I'd seen her in another role before, but then I was just researching. I couldn't find any films that I'd watched that she was in. But yeah, I really liked her. As a shy teenager, she's good, but I really, really like when she kills people. She was really badass.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all of that. Yeah, so I did see Catherine Newton quite a few times before this film, and she's one of those people that I've really started to really kind of enjoy watching. So I think
Mm,
originally she played a very minor character in Three Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and she also was one of the main characters in Detective Pikachu, which I really liked.
okay, I haven't.
Um, and I watched this kind of more indie film with her the other day, which was actually like a Groundhog Day situation.
Okay, which one was it? I realize now that I've lied. She was in Lady Bird. I watched that,
Oh
but she
yeah.
has a super minor role in there.
Oh, and I know her from Big Little Lies as well, because she plays Reese Witherspoon's daughter in that.
Okay, so I've seen her in many things. What was I
But
saying?
she's one of those people I think that's up and coming right now, so you don't realize how much you've actually seen her in because she sometimes just kind of pops up. I'm just having. Oh, she actually played Amy March in Little Women, but not the one like by Greta
Yeah,
Thunberg
the
in
the
the series.
miniseries.
What is the film? I literally am clicking on the film now. Oh yeah, it's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things.
Okay, I
So
don't know that one.
So funnily enough, that is similar to Happy Death Day. That is like a Groundhog Day situation, but then it's kind of like a teen romantic comedy drama
Mm,
thing, which is pretty cute. And so far, the type of roles I've seen her in, I think she's quite diverse. So I've seen her as kind of like playing more cute characters, like Millie is at the start of the film. But I've
mhm,
also seen her play a bit more like rude and like more mean characters. So
mhm.
I think her it's both her look and her acting style she can probably adjust quite well because I think
Yeah,
especially at the start of the film she generally looks like so sweet and innocent, and then once they dress her up properly and she changes kind of her attitude and the way she walks, she does look more like a killer. Yeah, but I thought they were both really good, both at the start as well as like once they switch bodies.
mhm.
The only thing I thought I was I was wondering whether Vince Vaughn's performance was just kind of like a generic teen girl, or whether him and Catherine would have worked together to kind of create this Millie character and sort of play her the same way. Because I didn't feel like they really did play her the same way. What do you
Yeah, that
think?
is true. That is true. Now that you say that, he was very, yeah, that is so true. He was very campy, like funny to see that gigantic man playing that campy teenager. But as you said it, now it doesn't really feel like he was playing Millie.
Yeah, exactly. And I think which is fine because, like you said, it's that whole role was pretty much there for like kind of the comedic value of it, isn't there was so much of it. I definitely thought
Yeah.
I really liked her character because she was just like this very sweet girl who is like so kind to like her family and to her friends, but and she's not like super popular, but she was also not like that. She didn't have that overly like girly attitude that Vince
Mhm.
Vaughn then played her with, and I did kind of think like, oh, it's a shame that they. Well, maybe they did, but like I didn't get the sense that they both did the same with the character, so that maybe that was a bit of a shame because he was more just playing a teenage girl, but not so much playing Millie.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but I do think as well the some of the acting was very stereotypical. Like if you get Josh, the best friend, the gay best friend, basically, he plays the role of the gay best friend because it is very like gay best friend tropey. But I thought that was funny. Like I didn't think that was bad. I could see him, and then seeing the actor's Instagram, I was like, okay, maybe that was him. So I think we had a discussion when we were talking about Prom, that musical, when it came out, that James Corden was being very stereotypical and stuff like that. And then it is a fine line between being offensive and just being natural. And I think in that role, Misha Osher, I don't know how to say his name, but then like the actor that plays Josh, I think that was him playing like a gay person the way that he would, because he seems like the character, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to talk about token characters in this film because I think there's unfortunately a bit of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, starting with Josh. So I got this from IMDb. So if this is wrong, then I'm really sorry. But I read that Misha and Osorovich is a non-binary actor,
Ah,
um,
okay.
which I think is really interesting. And I think they played the role really really well. But then I just had a problem with both of her best friends being kind of token people in the film. Like I think,
Mhm.
Josh being the only LGBT character as far as I'm aware, and Nyla being pretty much the only person of color in the film, or at least of like substantial character in the film to be. And I did kind of think it's yeah, I don't know. I always find it a bit difficult, especially when you have two characters like that who are both just kind of there to support the main character that don't really have their own storyline. I mean, I thought they were both great characters and they were really cool, but like it, it was a little bit too much the stereotype of
Mm.
supporting the main white female character. Unfortunately, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I agree and disagree with that, to be honest. Okay, just let me start by saying that I just googled Misha Osherakovich, and yeah, you're right. They're non-binary, so I apologize for calling they, him, he. But anyway, so I was saying about the what you were saying about the two best friends.
Mm.
They are token, but at the same time, not 100%. I feel like the film might have treated them the way that he has to then play upon the tropes, because when Josh and Nyla are running away from the butcher without knowing that it was actually Mealy, he screams like, "We cannot die!" No.
Oh, we're gonna
Oh
die
yeah,
because we're.
we're gonna die because I'm gay and you're black. So, and something happens. So maybe they're playing with the tropes. I do feel like that with Josh's character, because the character had the storyline of, like, oh, I am the only openly gay person in the school, and the only time that I even get to be with someone is when, straight guys realize they're not so straight, and then they try to, whatever. So there was this a little something about him. Whereas the character of Nyla didn't have that about herself. She was the friend. That was it about her. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, totally, and I agree. I did think that was a funny line, and there was like one in the trailer as well that
Yeah.
where Josh kind of says that and kind of makes the audience aware of like, oh,
Yeah.
we're very tropey characters at this moment.
And I think it's a little so, like, I think that slasher films do that. Some of them are very self-aware, and but they don't do anything besides being self-aware. They're like, I realize that I'm this and I'm playing upon these tropes, but I'm not doing anything extra. And I think that this film kind of does like that, kind of does that. But I think it, in some other areas, which when we go to spoilers, I'll be able to further that. But like in some other areas, the film offers something else, which will become clear once we go to spoilers.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's some level of self awareness, but then yeah, to me, then there's not enough that they do with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, because at the end of the day, like the two main characters are both white people, and obviously it's not to say that all films now cannot have white people in the main characters anymore, but then still there were so many other characters in the film that could have also had a bit more, or they could have fleshed out these supporting actors so that, because it did kind of feel like all that the film made them out to literally just be, these are Millie's best friends that are helping her, and like they were like super cool, and the film made them super cool, and the actors were really great.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, it's just I think they could have just done a bit more there. I mean, my main thing was, but that the start of the film was very over explanatory,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So in general, I thought I was gonna kind of like love this film, and I really did like it and enjoy it, but because it was a little bit, it wasn't as good as I expected it to be. It became better over time, but
Mm-hmm.
especially yeah, the start, for example, there's just like this whole bit where Millie sits with her mom like at the table. And anyway, there's this whole opening sequence with Millie where it becomes super clear what her backstory is through literally telling the audience and laying it on super thick what her backstory is. And
Yeah.
it's like, and this film basically starts with her having like 2 or 3 conversations with people who then explain to her what's happened to her and why and who she is. And I just kind of thought, okay, I hope the film's not gonna be like this the whole time. Which I didn't feel like it was, luckily, but
Yeah.
it was just like a bad. It put me on the wrong foot, I think.
Yeah, I think that her backstory, I think it's not spoiler to say what happened to her family, is it?
No, I think that's pretty much what the film starts with,
Okay.
so I think
So
fine.
like her dad died, and then, her family shifts because of that. Her mom drinks a lot and is not happy, and then her older sister, who is a cop, just just works basically. So so yeah, I thought that there were some, I don't know, some scenes over there that were overly touchy and just so unnecessary when they're talking about the dad and then being sad and stuff like that. I just don't think it worked. I don't think it was necessary.
It was basically, to me, PG-13 dialogue in a 15 film.
Yeah, it
And
was.
it's not, I'm not trying to say like, oh, 13-year-olds are like silly or anything. I'm sure they're just as good as reading between the lines, but I think in general in PG-13 films, I think it's more acceptable to provide a bit more of extra explanation of why certain things are happening. While in a 15, I think you need to give audience a little bit more credit and,
Yeah.
have audience kind of understand what's happening without, actually telling or saying everything super clearly.
Yeah, I didn't like those. I don't think they added anything to the story.
I think we're pretty much ready to go into spoilers. So if you're listening and you haven't seen it and you really care about spoilers, then turn off here and come back later.
But come back.
But do come back. Yes, come back
Yeah.
for the end. Let's go back to what you said about what you when we were talking about token characters. What did you think? What did you mean when you said the film gives it something else?
I was going to say that they survive, but something else was coming from that.
Yeah, at least they didn't go with that trope, but I feel like they couldn't have gone. They couldn't have like made the person of color and the gay person die in the end after having that quote.
Yeah, I think, also the gay character, also like Josh, he the fact that he was gay was the comedy at some points. Which, I mean, the favorite part for me, which is so good, is when they have Millie as the butcher, tied up in a chair, on a chair, and then Josh's mom comes, and Josh like freezes. He's like, "We're role playing," and the woman's like, "But isn't that a sex thing?" And then he's like, "Yeah." And then Millie as the butcher says something, and he's like, "Shut up, naughty girl." I just love that so much. I just love that so much. That was such a funny moment. And again, I don't know if it's because I'm being over nice to this film, but I felt like the fact that Josh's character was gay and that was the butt of the joke sometimes, I don't think it was bad. Like the bad way that I don't think they did it in a bad way. Did you?
I think it was definitely that was a really funny bit, and also in that same scene where he sort of tries to come out to his mom as straight to
Yeah,
save the situation, and she doesn't believe him. I thought was quite pretty funny because it gave the impression a lot that obviously him being gay is not an issue in the universe of this
yeah,
film, which in a lot of like other films, you know, gay people having to come out of gay is just like this thing that like the film has to push through, and I like it when a film is just kind of like happy to have these openly gay characters without
yeah.
it being an issue to anyone.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I can't actually remember any specific other situation where his gayness was like, oh, part of the joke. But in general, I'm not a huge fan of it, just because I just think, well, you wouldn't do the same thing if someone is straight.
But okay, so, but do you think that that scene was him being the butt of the joke? Because I don't think I expressed myself quite well. Do you think that gayness in this film was the butt of the joke at times?
No, I would
Hmm.
say not necessarily, and I think that scene was fitting enough because I think the other
Yeah.
way around, if you'd have a straight character who then for some reason has to act like they're gay. I mean, we see that way more often, so it's fine that it was like the other
Yeah.
way around in this case. The man on man kiss between Vince Vaughn and Millie's love interest, right?
Hmm.
What I liked about it was that, well, both the actresses really went for it, and I really like that. But also, what I really liked about it is that it gave like it sent a message maybe to the audience, as in like, because I felt it like it felt realistic in a way that oh, actually, this guy really likes Millie for who she is. So whether she
Yeah.
looks like Millie, this pretty like young girl, or whether he looks like she looks like Vince Vaughn. I
Hmm.
really liked that the message that kind of sends to the audience, like, look, he likes her who she is, and he's happy to kiss her no matter what she looks like.
I saw it like you said. Uh, his like Millie's love interest was it Booker?
Oh yeah, Booker, yeah,
Booker. Yeah.
Booker.
Um, what's a Booker?
Yeah, because it sounds like she says booger at some point, and that's like another joke, I think, and that's literally why his name is like that, I think.
So I think that Booker, he really liked her for who she is, she was, and then he just went for the kiss because it was a a touching moment for them, and the fact that she was in the body of a man was just. I mean, it was funny, but it was funny not as in, oh, look, there are two men kissing, but it's funny because she is a tiny girl, and then he's kissing, like Booker is kissing a gigantic guy whose hand is bigger than than Booker's face. And I think that I thought it was quite a cute moment, to be honest.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cute. At this point, I didn't even know she was gonna be saved, so maybe you're gonna have to be kissing this butcher
Yeah,
looking
exactly.
Millie forever if you're happy with that.
Yeah, and he was. So, I mean, Millie was the one who was like, maybe we should wait for when my hand is not as big as your face. So, Booker had no problems with that.
Yeah, that's very true, and I like I said, I thought that was kind of like sweet, and hopefully, especially younger people take that message in that way that it's just like no, it's just about who you like, and that it doesn't matter what they look like and
Yeah.
things like that. And I think that's really cute.
Yeah, I thought that that love interest was so nice. He was so on board with everything. And he wanted to, help Millie during the class when the teacher was humiliating Millie and things like that. I thought he was really a really nice character.
Yeah, he was a good love interest for sure. Oh yeah, well, that's actually the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Now that you're talking about like the teacher,
Mm.
it's funny because what I really liked about I'd say Catherine Newton's performance is that whenever she was Millie, I really thought she was so cute, and I really like empathized with her. And whenever she was the butcher, I really was like, oh my god, she's the villain. She's so horrible. But
Yeah,
all the deaths in the film were so satisfying to watch because
so satisfying.
they were all horrible people, and like I don't care that like the film set it up so well, as in like, oh, we know that it's gonna be the bully, we know it's gonna be the horrible teacher, but like it was more about the journey. I actually didn't care that it was predictable because it was just like, oh, this is so nice to watch that like just all the dickheads are getting killed left and right.
Exactly. And I thought that was quite interesting because they were people bullying Millie, but they were killed by the butcher. So it wasn't like Millie taking revenge. It was like this guy kind of realizing how it is in the body of a teenage girl who's been bullied for a while, and he just like kills people. So he kills the teacher, who is a dickhead, and then he kills the bully girl, whatever, Ryler her name is, after she was being a bit homophobic. And he also kills like one of the I don't know,
Like the
teenage,
jocks.
the jocks, yeah, that grab Millie's buttons like, oh, I'm gonna whatever do something to you. So it was quite interesting that they were all doing something to Millie, but then who killed them was the butcher.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't think we got like a really good answer of like why the butcher killed. I think he just enjoyed killing teenagers really. But
Yeah,
um but it is interesting though that he then killed all of Millie's kind of enemies as Millie, or at least in her body.
yeah,
And it I just thought and it yeah, and I did feel she was just so bad. She like at least Catherine Newton at the in those scenes was just so badass because it was just really fun.
oh, it was so good. When she kills the teacher, she puts the the goggles on, and then the oh, that white, the jacket thing, I don't know how you call that. She gets ready to kill him, and he really deserves the teacher. But what I thought was interesting again is that because the butcher, as himself in his own body, he was a very tall, powerful man, and that didn't take away when he became Millie, who was a smaller young woman. That didn't take away from his power. He gets a beating sometimes, like especially when the teacher just like is kicking him at her. But he still kills everyone else. So he's still powerful in a body that people would assume is not as powerful.
Well, I was gonna say that as well, actually. So they make quite a few comments to um, that the butcher in Millie's body is not as powerful because she's a shorter female. But then,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, yeah, you're right. Or he, I guess, was forced to then use different tools to still kind of kill these people. So I
Mm-hmm.
almost thought that was really interesting because it almost mean like, well, bodily strength or how huge you are doesn't necessarily mean anything because you can still have the upper hand, I suppose. I suppose as well at the same time the butcher still had the butcher's brain, and it seemed like he had a brain that really wanted to kill people. So
Mm-hmm.
that'd be easier than because all the people that the butcher was killing weren't psychopaths like he was. So, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I really like that because I feel like well she's not as heavy, she's a bit shorter. I wouldn't necessarily say gender plays a role into that, but I definitely think it was cool that, she was still just as badass and killing everyone that she wanted. Like, I don't think, well, besides obviously the main characters, no one else got away.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's cool that, when her friends realize that Millie is in the body of the butcher, they like 2 seconds later they're like, okay, whatever we can do to help you. So it's like it's really like it showed like a really nice friendship between them. I thought that was quite interesting to add to the characters, like the bond that they had. Likewise with the butcher, I felt like he wasn't a good, like a well explored character. He was just like a butcher who killed, which is fine. Which is fine. Yeah, which is fine. Like, I mean, slasher films have tons and tons of killers who haven't been explored, and that is completely fine. I just thought that maybe if they added a little story to him, or like a reason why he kills, that wouldn't hurt, I think.
I guess I personally enjoyed how pointless it seems, as in like, oh, we're not gonna give you a reason why the butcher is the way he is. And I also in general liked how simple the story was, as in the story around the dagger that um that makes them switch their body, and then how they have to then get the bodies back. It's so simple, it's just like, okay, we'll just stab again at the same time, and it's cool. And like, I think that's great because there's so many films like this that for some reason they have this super complicated story on how to switch back, or not even switch back, but just in general, horror films sometimes just go so crazy in the third act. But here it was just like, no, we're just running after this person to get this knife and get them like within 24, and I just thought it's kind of nice and refreshing, just like, okay, I can just enjoy this and not have to worry so much about following the storyline.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so for example, I was thinking about Halloween, for example. Um, in the first film, not the sequels after. The film didn't give a reason why Michael would kill, but then it had that little story of him being sick and killing his sister, or like Friday the 13th, Jason, like the camp counselors were having sex and they didn't pay attention to Jason dying. So, just little things. I didn't need a full on story on the butcher or the dagger, which I completely agree. Sometimes some horror films, they just go on and on and on about a curse and then this and this, and then they have to meet this other person who has no seen this before, and then you're just like, okay, now I'm lost. I don't care about it anymore. So I do agree with that about the dagger and the curse. Still think I could have some more on the butcher. Not that I missed it. I mean, I don't think the film wasn't as good because of that. I just think that if you added something, it wouldn't cause any harm, in my opinion, of course.
I guess it's different for me because I've kind of been looking into these kind of tropes a lot in my PhD work, and like actually, in particular, Halloween.
Mm.
Even though they show it really quickly, like pretty much what Halloween is saying is that the reason that he starts killing people, and in particular kind of young girls, is combination of the sexual awakening of women, as well as that he might be traumatized or having psychological issues. And that bothers me a lot because it means that it's like, oh, people with psychological issues and traumas become you know what I mean? And
Mm.
I so that's why I kind of liked that in The Butcher there was just none of that. It's just it was like he was born to be a killer. I mean, we don't
Mm.
know that. Like maybe something did happen to him, but it felt like he was just and even like when Catherine Newton played the butcher, I really liked that they didn't give her much dialogue, and it was just he was just going around killing people, and that's just what he
Yeah.
does. And I think I see what you're saying as well, because I think especially because other films are so, and well, and especially because this film explains everything else so well that it is a bit like, oh wow, we don't know anything about the butcher, but then thinking about it, I think that's actually really great, and it
Yeah, it does create a contrast.
for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Now that you said about the contrast, that makes sense. He was the only character, like the only important character, I'd say, to not be explained, or the only thing that wasn't completely explained, and hence he becomes more dangerous. Could be.
Oh, and I really liked the ending because obviously they switch bodies.
Oh
They
yeah.
switch back, and then we see it in the ambulance to the hospital that that the butcher may or may not still be alive. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh god, this is gonna be the end. We're gonna roll to the credits now, just like any other serial killer film. Oh, is he alive? Is he not? But then actually, we then cut to Millie's house where he breaks in and tries to kill her anyway, and I was like, and I just really enjoyed that because that's exactly what I kind of like. I'm glad that the film then had a proper ending and there was a proper showdown between them two.
And then was the arc that I was going to say about, like, we see the family arc from being a broken family to then being together and killing the butcher together as family.
And going back to, oh, Millie's body is weaker than the butcher's, but then actually she then ends up killing him. So maybe it's just her attitude that's just like stronger now.
Mm-hmm.
And the butcher
Yeah.
maybe kind of looked down on her because he was like, ugh, I'm no longer in like this big bulky body. But actually, the fact that she managed to kill him means, well, maybe it doesn't matter what body you're in.
I think that the real message of the film is size doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, and not in a usual way, not in a diety. But I think actually what you're saying is probably true because going back to like the kiss, it probably is kind of, yeah. It's who you are on the inside that matters, because I think there's a lot of that in the film. To be fair, that like all the good people, you know, are just like really good, and I think Millie is a really great
Mm.
person, regardless of what body she is in.
That is true about the good people being good. Like they're really good. Like they don't have moments that you question why they did something. If you take Millie's friend, Millie herself, and then Booker, good people, good people, all, and that's good.
Oh, and I was gonna say, and I'm glad that there wasn't much conflict between those characters, between them. Like it was all like
Mm.
the relationships between them were actually really really strong. And in a lot of films, you'd have kind of those moments where Millie might have an argument with Nyla and Josh, and then they split off. But I didn't feel like there was much of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I have a question. Unless you have anything to add.
I think I think that's all my points.
Okay, I just forgot to say something that I hated
Yeah.
Millie's sister. She was so annoying. But anyway, that wasn't my question. My question is
Just wanted to point that
question is
out.
just point out my hatred. So the question is, what was your favorite death?
That is a good question. Oh, I think the one where she kills several jocks, just because I just love that she was just like, because so in reality, if that would have happened to someone, then the men probably think that they have power over the woman, but actually the woman
Mm-hmm.
then had power over them, and I love that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that one.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good one.
What about yours?
Mine is not as insightful. So I just liked in the cold open when the butcher like so there are four teenagers and then he kills them separately and when he kills one of the guys by shoving a bottle of
Ugh.
wine in his throat and then just like slapping his throat and then you see all of the glass coming out of his neck. That was my favorite one. No insight there, nothing, no message besides the gore.
I think it's fine to just enjoy the gore. Like
Yeah.
I'm just this weird person that enjoys gory films. Like I love the soft films and
Mm.
hustle films, but I don't. But weirdly, I don't actively watch the gory scenes because I find them too horrible to watch. So it's more that I wouldn't have been able to properly like look at them.
Yeah.
I cannot explain why I still put myself through watching these films. There's something about it I just really enjoy, even if I don't enjoy the actual
Hmm.
gore. But I couldn't tell you why.
Maybe one day we can discuss that. Maybe the message that the death that I saw was trying to convey is that too much drinking can cause harm. If you drink a whole
Maybe,
bottle, you
maybe.
know.
Yeah, you shouldn't be drinking a
Yeah.
whole bottle, especially not in like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
It's well, I guess that could be a trope as well if you think about it.
Yeah.
About like teenagers drinking, and being unsupervised. I don't know, but I don't think it's that
No, I
deep.
don't think it is, but we could say it is.
I think, when you do film studies, I think you get to this point where you can make everything deep, even if the director had no no actual vision around a specific thing. I've definitely had that before, and I can't remember what film it was. I once saw a film and I was like, oh my god, this film is so deep. And then when I read an interview with director, I really wish I remember which one this was, but maybe one day I'll tell you. Then I ran an interview with director, and director was just like, "Oh, there was actually no real meaning behind this. This is just I just made this film," and I just thought, "Oh my god, what? This just ruins like the whole film for me instantly because I thought." But then I guess it's not always about what the director means. It could just you take experiences from.
Yeah, I don't think it is what the director means all the time because it is a piece of art, basically. A film is a piece of art, and how you interpreted it goes from your background, everything that you've seen, everything that you've studied, and your personal beliefs. Because like if I watch a film, I'm gonna have a different take on it than you, even though we're two film students and we have similar interests, but we're still gonna see different things. So I'm very cautious about saying like, oh, this is what the director meant. I'm like, yeah, that's a cool trivia, but that's not necessarily, like analyzing the film. Sometimes like you get like in moments like you described. I've had that before where I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." Like for example, The Babadook. The director was like,
Mm,
"That's not about depression." Like, yeah, it is.
what?
Yeah, she said, "Oh,
No way.
yeah." She was like, "The film's not about depression." I was like, "Have you seen the film that you made? It is." Like, I don't care if you say it's not. It is about depression.
When I guess as well, sometimes the director might not realize that what they're putting out is subconsciously
Yeah.
like I don't know what the director's experiences are with mental health and stuff, but maybe if they had some kind, if they wrote it during a certain experience, then it's still gonna come out. It's like Midsommar was literally written while the director's going through a breakup, like, and you can tell even if they didn't mean for that to
Yeah.
come. I mean, obviously in that case, I'd say definitely meant for that, but but I think, and then I guess as an audience, it's just kind of like you take from it what in line with your experience and also sometimes what you need from it, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
'Cause I definitely have certain films, and we were talking about this, how we watch horror films sometimes in, because we need comfort.
Yeah.
Well, it's like for some people, it's like the most anxiety inducing
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
And I do agree with that to some extent, but especially horror films I've already seen.
Mm-hmm.
Or, for example, like the type of films I find really comforting are like the Unfriended movies.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you why, but I just find them, a bunch of teenagers on a laptop defeating this demon that's in the laptop. It's just like, I just find it really comforting, especially because I've already seen it. And I don't even know why we started talking about this, but I just like, yeah, I just like thinking about that. That sometimes it's just like, it's not all about being, um, about the director putting loads of meaning behind it. It's just more what meaning you want behind
Yeah.
it. And sometimes it's also just fine to be able to enjoy a film. Because for example, I think for if what I was saying about like, oh, the start of Freaky was so over-explanatory, but actually it's just like a really fun film to watch, and like I don't think you need to necessarily. It's not. It doesn't. It can be if for you if you want it to be, but also for me, I think. Well, we obviously did love overanalyzing now, but I really tried during the film to just kind of enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, I think yeah, I think there are moments and there are films that, beg for different moments. Some films I just go and watch films thinking I'm gonna overanalyze the shit out of this film. And then sometimes I finish a film and I'm like, what? People ask me like, what did you think of it? And I cannot give a coherent answer. Like, it was good. Yeah, but why was it good? I liked it. Yeah, but why did you like it? And then I cannot say anything because I was just
Yeah.
enjoying it.
No, I feel like considering we have a lot of opinion on films, sometimes like I agree, I have that as well. Sometimes like I have no opinion on this film.
Yeah,
I just had a good time, and I'll
exactly.
probably never watch this again, or maybe I will. But I just, it's just, and sometimes I also find I can't justify liking a film, and I know it's a bad film, and I still enjoyed it.
Mm, for sure. I mean, I've enjoyed so many shit films over the years. And I think it's fine. Like, who gets to dictate the films that should be enjoyed and which films shouldn't?
No, for sure, and it should definitely be to also be some. level of escapism.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Even us, like we're overanalyzing some of them, but you watch Unfriended for escapism, and I watch, I don't know, Halloween for the same reason. So I think that's why films are so good.
I know films are so good. Cool. Well, I feel like we can both answer the would you recommend this film
Yeah,
question with we probably both would, wouldn't
yeah,
we?
we would. I would be careful not to recommend it to people like that they think horror is supposed to scare you and be, horrific. I would recommend this to people who don't like horror and for horror open-minded horror fans. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, or open-minded comedy fans,
Yeah.
but I just think I tend to find that non-horror fans are not open-minded towards horror films unless if like it's a Get Out maybe or something, but even then it comes with a lot of convincing. But that's okay, I guess. I mean, this is more for horror audience, but I just always, I mean, I think we've had so many films so far where I've just been like, I'd recommend this to everyone, but I know no one, only my horror film friends will watch this. But
Mm,
I think that's your loss at the end of the
exactly.
day. Cool. Well, I guess that's it for today.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let us know what you think of Freaky if you want, or just not where you listen to this.